The industrial cleaner burned against Evelyn's raw hands, a sting so constant it had become part of her skin. The bucket beside her churned with gray soap-torn water that sent up weak curls of steam useless against the freezing air that haunted the lower levels of the corporate tower. Down here, warmth was a luxury no one bothered to supply. But several floors above, in the glass-wattled throne room of Stellar Crest Industries, CEO Arthur Sterling kept his office locked at a perfect 72 degrees every single day. Evelyn scrubbed harder, jaw tight. Of course, the cold didn't reach him. It only reached people like her. She wrung out the mop, the rough fibers grating against the calluses on her palms. These hands, once adorned with the finest jewelry, had routinely signed off on transactions for the very marble she now scrubbed. She knelt, her left knee protesting with a dull ica lingering reminder of a ski trip years ago to the glacial peaks of Mount Cinder, a family excursion with Arthur. Back then, he'd been her rock, carrying her with tender care. Now, he'd stride past her as if she were a ghost, or perhaps a stubborn smudge on the pristine floors. Beneath his notice, two women from the financial department hurried past. Evelyn recognized them both. She had once helped Clara select a gift for the chief auditor's retirement and advised Sylvia on the best childcare facility for her son. Now, their chatter died as they saw her hunched figure, their pace quickening, the sharp click of their heels fading down the long corridor. No greetings. Evelyn was used to it. The sudden plunge from prosperity had a way of rendering a person invisible, stripping away their past faster than any magic. Arthur had exiled her 2 months prior, without a word, without explanation. Her packed luggage had simply appeared outside their grand residence. The locks changed, her credit lines were severed, their shared accounts emptied. "You no longer align with my trajectory," he had declared through the closed door, refusing to meet her gaze. "You are an anchor, and I am destined for the stars." Their children, 8-year-old Oscar and 5-year-old Lily, remained with her. She had to feed them, maintain their modest dwelling in the bustling heart of the metropolis, and provide for their needs. Her pride had been a luxury she could no longer afford. The very evening she saw the advertisement for a custodial position at Arthur's firm, she applied, not out of a desire to confront him, but because she knew their payroll was dependable, and a faint, desperate hope lingered that she might uncover the truth behind his sudden cruelty. The elevator doors chimed, opening to reveal Arthur in the hallway. He wasn't alone. The head of marketing practically jogged beside him, nodding with fervent agreement. Arthur moved with an arrogant, proprietary stride, clad in a new suit, the color of twilight steel. Evelyn knew its cost an amount that could sustain her family for nearly half a year, and see that this refuse is cleared from the reception area before the foreign delegates arrive. Arthur announced loudly, his voice cutting through the quiet, as he passed within mere feet of Evelyn. He didn't glance at her, but the unspoken implication was clear. She flinched, shrinking lower over her bucket, her face obscured by the curtain of her hair. Immediately, "Mr. Sterling," the manager practically stammered, "the cleaning staff is profoundly inefficient. Their personnel are quite frankly unqualified. They seem to hire anyone off the street." Arthur paused at his office door, raising his voice so every word would pierce her ears. "No refinement, no social grace. All they understand is how to push dirt around. That's precisely why I'm dissolving our union. It's unbearable to coexist with someone devoid of ambition." The door slammed shut, echoing like a gavel. Evelyn released a slow, ragged breath. Tears burned behind her eyes, hot and defiant, but she refused to let them fall. She gripped the mop handle, scrubbing the floor with furious intent. He would not have the satisfaction of seeing her break. She would not cry. Oscar needed new winter boots. For that, she would endure anything. The workday drew to a close. Offices emptied, lights dimmed in the cubicles, and the human din receded, replaced by the low thrum of servers and the gentle sigh of the ventilation system. Evelyn ascended to the uppermost floor, the administrative wing. It was the quietest section, its plush carpeting muffling her footsteps. A solitary desk lamp glowed in Arthur's reception area. Fiona Gray, the young assistant, hired a mere 6 months prior, sat hunched at the desk. Fiona was strikingly beautiful, yet perpetually wore a haunted expression. Evelyn frequently saw her in tears. At first, she'd suspected Fiona was Arthur's clandestine lover, tormented by his demands, but there was no spark of passion in the girl's eyes, only raw, unadulterated fear. Evelyn entered the reception area, her bucket clanking softly. Fiona flinched, lifting her head. Her makeup was streaked, her nose red and swollen. "Miss Harper," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She was the sole person in the entire building who still accorded Evelyn the courtesy of her previous marital title, "just collecting the last of the waste." "Fiona," Evelyn replied quietly, trying to avert her gaze from the girl's tear-stained face, "and I need to attend to the floors." "Has Mr. Sterling departed?" "No," Fiona suddenly gasped, leaping to her feet. She looked absolutely terrified, her hands trembling uncontrollably. He stepped out to meet a visitor, but he'll be returning momentarily." Evelyn nodded, heading towards the imposing dark wood door of the CEO's office. She needed to complete her duties and rush home to her children. Her sister Maria had promised to watch them until 9. Time was rapidly slipping away. She pushed open the office door. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of Arthur's expensive cologne and fine leather. The vast desk where they had once, in another life, discussed corporate strategies now loomed in the center like an unassailable fortress. Evelyn began wiping dust from the wide windowsill when she heard quick footsteps behind her. It was Fiona. The young assistant rushed into the office and, without a word, seized Evelyn's arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her fingers digging into Evelyn's forearm like steel. "Quickly," Fiona hissed, her eyes wide with terror. "Conceal yourself beneath the desk." "What, Fiona? Have you lost your senses? If Arthur discovers me here, if you don't hide, you won't uncover anything." The assistant cut her off abruptly, from the hallway. They heard the unmistakable sound of the elevator doors opening, followed by Arthur's loud, self-assured laugh. "He's about to conduct a highly confidential discussion. You must hear the truth, Miss Harper. Please, for heaven's sake, go." Fiona shoved her towards the desk with unexpected force. There was no time for deliberation. The voices were drawing nearer. Evelyn, yielding to the girl's frantic urgency and a strange, cold premonition, dove beneath the massive oak desk. It was a cramped space, smelling of furniture polish and the ancient dust the mop couldn't reach. Evelyn pulled her legs tightly to her chest and froze. Fiona darted out of the office a split second before the door swung open. "Do come in, Mr. Blackwood." Arthur's voice was smooth, almost oily. "A brandy, perhaps, or shall we proceed directly to our agenda?" "Straight to business, Arthur," replied the other voice. It was raspy, unpleasant, and chillingly familiar. Evelyn recognized it. It belonged to Elias Stone, a shadowy legal consultant Arthur had previously engaged with. Despite Arthur's later sworn claims of having severed all ties, "My private jet departs in 3 hours. Are the documents prepared?" Evelyn clamped a hand over her mouth. Her heart hammered so violently she feared its frantic rhythm would be audible throughout the room. Arthur's heavy dress shoes strode directly past her face. His chair scraped, bearing the weight of her estranged husband. "Everything is in order," Arthur stated, a rustle of papers accompanying his words. "Here is the comprehensive package. The corporate charter, all orders of appointment, bank powers of attorney, and the endorsements." The consultant prompted. "The most crucial element, the CEO's endorsement." Evelyn tensed, bracing herself. She expected to hear the name of some mistress, the one for whom he had irrevocably shattered their family. She prepared to hear him sign over their former home or their coastal villa to his new flame. "You wound me, Elias." Arthur chuckled, a sound that sent shivers down Evelyn's spine. "It's all flawlessly signed. My dear wife, quite unknowingly, has diligently worked on my behalf. I practiced nightly until the replication was flawless. See for yourself." A pause, then the rustling of pages. "Indeed," the consultant drawled at last. "Impeccable execution. Evelyn Harper, the signature is an exact replica of the one on her official identification. And the dates are strategically backdated, precisely as we stipulated. 3 years ago." A profound chill spread through Evelyn. Her name. Why was her name implicated in this? Exactly. Arthur's voice hardened, taking on a dangerous edge. 3 years ago, Evelyn Harper purportedly established a subsidiary corporation, Celestial Dynamics LLC, ostensibly for material acquisition, and for the entirety of those 3 years, she, as the sole founder and CEO, has been diverting government funds through that shell entity. "The sum?" the consultant asked briskly. 5 million credits, Arthur stated with chilling clarity. "The capital is already secured in my offshore accounts on the Sunstone Islands, and Celestial Dynamics LLC now faces a massive liability to the Treasury, with an insurmountable deficit on its ledger." Evelyn felt the floor plummet beneath her. though she was already huddled on it. 5 million. That meant incarceration, not merely debt. This was embezzlement on a colossal scale, and she won't be able to talk her way out of this. The consultant probed, a hint of doubt in his voice. Suppose she claims ignorance, that the endorsement is a fabrication. Forensic analysis. What analysis, Elias? Arthur laughed, a sound so laced with contempt that Evelyn felt a wave of nausea. Consider her current occupation. What does she do for a living? A cleaner, in my very own office. So what? So what? You imbecile. Arthur slammed his hand down on the desk directly above Evelyn's head. Her body recoiled. Her fingerprints are everywhere. On the official documents, within the archived records, on the safe itself. I deliberately employed her as a custodial worker so she would inadvertently leave her prints all over the scene of the transgression. Every single day. She polishes these cabinets. She handles these confidential files. The ensuing investigation will unearth thousands of her fingerprints. And the motive, a discarded spouse, desperately in need of financial resources, living in impoverished circumstances, scrubbing latrines. Who would possibly believe she didn't abscond with the funds for retribution, or to escape her plight? Evelyn squeezed her eyes shut. The tears she had valiantly suppressed in the hallway now burst forth, hot and bitter. He hadn't simply abandoned her. He had been meticulously planning this for months. He hadn't hired her out of pity, or even merely to humiliate her. He had hired her as a sacrificial lamb. She herself had been diligently polishing the very bars of her future prison cell every time she had picked up a cloth. Brilliant, the consultant conceded, a note of dark admiration in his voice. Cynical, but brilliant. What about the original identification? A copy is within the file. I purloined the original from her handbag yesterday while she was taking her lunch break in the staff lounge. I will discover it during the search, claiming she was deliberately concealing it. Arthur stood up, beginning to pace the office. So, we affix the corporate seal here, and here. That concludes it. Now, Evelyn Harper is officially a national-scale fraudster. When do we initiate the process? Elias inquired. Immediately. Evelyn heard Arthur pull out his phone. Key taps. A dial tone. She stopped breathing. Greetings, emergency services dispatch. Arthur's voice underwent an instantaneous transformation. Now, it was the voice of a concerned, responsible citizen. I wish to report highly suspicious activity. Yes, the address is Stellar Crest Tower, Block 145, the offices of Stellar Crest Industries. He paused, listening to the operator. I observed our cleaning staff member, Evelyn Harper, tampering with the secure vault that contains our confidential corporate documents. She was acting extremely erratic. She appeared to be attempting to remove something. I have just checked, and several critical corporate documents are indeed missing. Yes, she is still present within the building, potentially armed or in a state of extreme distress. Please dispatch personnel immediately. Arthur ended the call. In the chilling silence of the office, his voice resonated like a death knell. They indicated a response team will arrive in 10 minutes. Well, Elias, you may exit via the service stairwell, and I shall await the unfolding drama. Evelyn stared at her hands. They were shaking uncontrollably. 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, individuals armed with tactical gear would storm this office. She did not possess 5 million credits. She only had a bucket of dirty water and a fabricated CEO title that would guarantee her a decade in prison. Her children would be left utterly alone, or worse, at his mercy. She gazed at her husband's expensive leather shoes, standing barely a foot from her face. He was standing there, whistling a cheerful melody, awaiting the arrival of law enforcement. Time was an unrelenting predator. Arthur stepped towards the expansive window. Evelyn could only see his back, draped in the luxurious fabric of his jacket, and heard the faint clink of glass. He was pouring himself water, or perhaps a celebratory brandy. 10 minutes. She now had 9, or perhaps only 8. She did not wait for him to turn around. The paralyzing fear that had held her captive beneath the desk suddenly transmuted into a cold, calculating surge of energy. Evelyn knew this office building better than Arthur ever could. 3 years ago, when the firm first relocated to this tower, she had personally overseen the intricate renovations. Arthur had merely dismissed the blueprints, saying, "Just ensure it looks impressive. I have no time for trivialities." And she had. She knew every inch of wiring, every hidden recess. She knew about the utility access point concealed behind the ornate, mahogany panel to the right of the awards display. Evelyn, moving with the silent grace of a shadow, slipped out from under the desk. Her knees scraped against the stiff carpet, burning with friction, yet she registered no pain. Arthur remained by the window, gazing down at the bustling thoroughfare below, likely scanning for the telltale flashes of emergency lights. He was whistling a tune that, to Evelyn, sounded precisely like a funeral dirge. She took a step. The parquet flooring remained silent. She had personally insisted on the highest quality subfloor during the initial construction. Another step. Her hand brushed against the cold, smooth panel. Her fingers, guided by instinct, located the concealed mechanism, a minute indentation, practically invisible to the casual eye. A press. The click was faint, but in the echoing silence of the office, it resonated like a gunshot. Arthur spun around abruptly. Evelyn had already slipped into the dark opening, pulling the narrow door shut behind her. "Who's there?" The muffled voice came from the office, thick as if through cotton. She pressed her back against the reverse side of the panel, clamping a hand over her mouth. Her heart hammered somewhere in her throat, making it difficult to draw breath. She heard Arthur approach the shelving unit. He yanked at one of the decorative books, then checked the safe. He was oblivious to the hidden door. He assumed the sound was merely a falling object or a draft. "Must have imagined it," he muttered, his voice barely a foot from her. "Nerves. Where are those damned constables?" Evelyn exhaled slowly through her nose. She was in the utility corridor, a narrow passageway nestled between the walls, designed for routing cables and providing access to the ventilation shafts. It smelled of dust, dry plaster, and a faint, unsettling hint of rodent droppings. There was no direct light, only faint slivers piercing through the ventilation grills above. She knew her way. This forgotten corridor led directly to the fire escape, a route typically utilized only by maintenance technicians and network administrators. The elevators were a trap. If the authorities had already breached the building, they would invariably secure the elevator lobby first. She needed to descend to the subterranean levels, to the archives. Fiona's urgent words echoed in her mind. "You need to hear the truth." But the truth, uncorroborated, would be insufficient. She needed tangible evidence. Arthur had explicitly informed his legal counsel that the incriminating documents were stored in the archives, within the Celestial Dynamics LLC folder. If she fled now, empty-handed, she would be nothing more than a desperate fugitive, with no hope of vindication. She absolutely needed that file. Evelyn navigated by touch, her hands extended before her. Cobwebs clung to her face, tangling in her hair. Her janitorial uniform, a synthetic, uncomfortable fabric, snagged on exposed wires. She stumbled over a forgotten toolbox, left behind by one of the workers, and barely suppressed a scream, biting her lip until she tasted blood. Ahead, a hazy rectangle of light materialized, the exit to the concrete stairwell. Evelyn eased the door open. The stairwell was deserted. Concrete steps descended into an inky blackness. Far away, she heard the distant wail of a siren. It grew steadily louder, approaching with the predatory precision of a hunter scenting its prey. Evelyn ran. She practically leaped over steps, her hand gripping the grimy railing. Third floor, second, first. On the ground floor, she froze. Voices were clearly audible behind the heavy metal door leading to the lobby. "Everyone remain in position. Federal agents are taking command." They were already here. They had stormed the main entrance. Now, they would ascend to Arthur's office, find him seemingly bewildered by the supposed theft, and then begin their systematic sweep of the building. Evelyn sprinted downwards, to the subalda basement. It was significantly colder here. The air was damp and heavy. Water sloshed beneath her feet. Apparently, a pipe had burst somewhere, and no one had been in a hurry to rectify it. Now, those were the problems of CEO Evelyn Harper, not the actual owner. The archives were situated at the very end of the long, dimly lit corridor. The door was unlocked. The locking mechanism had been broken a month ago. A detailed Evelyn, who cleaned here in the mornings, was well aware of. She flung herself inside and flicked the light switch. The fluorescent lamp flickered erratically, reluctantly bathing the room in a sickly, pale illumination. Shelf units, endless rows of gray metal shelves crammed with files, stretched into the oppressive gloom. "Oh, please help me," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. She rushed to the section labeled with the letter C. Comet, Cosmos, Celestial. There it was. Celestial Dynamics LLC. A thick file, bulging with heavy cardstock papers. Evelyn snatched it. Her hands were trembling so violently she nearly dropped the crucial documents. She opened the file at random, the very first sheet, the order appointing the CEO, and a signature. Her signature, a perfect, chillingly accurate copy, Had she not known she hadn't signed it, she would have believed it herself. She pressed the file to her chest. Now run. Hold it. Freeze. The voice slammed into her back. Evelyn froze, feeling an icy dread seep under her skin. She slowly turned around. Mr. Jennings, the night watchman, stood in the archive doorway, dot in his hands. He held a powerful flashlight, its beam aimed directly at her eyes, and a sturdy rubber baton. Mr. Jennings had been employed here under the previous ownership. Long before Arthur acquired the building, he remembered Evelyn when she was pregnant with Oscar. He remembered her bringing him homemade berry tarts when she stayed late at the office. Miss Harper, Mr. Jennings, lowered the flashlight. His face, etched with decades of wrinkles, registered extreme confusion. "What are you doing down here?" "The authorities, they are searching for you. Mr. Sterling stated over the internal radio that you embezzled funds." "Mr. Jennings," Evelyn's voice broke into a desperate rasp. She took a step towards him, pressing the file to her chest like a shield. "Do you honestly believe that? You have known me for 10 years. You have witnessed me cleaning these floors for 2 months. Do you truly think I am a thief?" The old man remained silent, shifting his weight uneasily. His eyes darted between the incriminating file in her trembling hands and the corridor, where the distinct sound of heavy boots was rapidly approaching. "He said you were dangerous," the guard stated uncertainly. "He said to detain you at all costs. He set me up." Evelyn spoke quickly, feeling tears welling up again. "He illegally transferred a company into my name, burdened me with massive debt, all so he could escape himself. If they apprehend me now, I will never see my children again. Oscar, Lily, you remember Lily, Mr. Jennings, she gave you a drawing for the Winter Festival." The guard's face twitched. He remembered, of course. He remembered the whimsical fox drawn by a child's hand that still hung in his security booth above the monitors. From upstairs, a coarse shout echoed down the stairwell. "Check the basement. Move it." Mr. Jennings flinched. He looked at Evelyn, then back at the stairs. A visible struggle played out in his eyes. Duty, fear of losing his livelihood, fear of his powerful employer versus his conscience. "Run," he breathed, suddenly stepping aside and clearing the passage. "Thank you," Evelyn whispered, her voice raw with gratitude. "Thank you. I truly had nowhere else to turn. You did precisely the correct thing by coming to me. Family matters must always be resolved within the sanctity of the home, not exposed on the streets. Go to the guest room. There is a plush blanket on the sofa. Lie down. I will bring the tea there." Evelyn nodded, and on shaky legs, walked into the adjoining room. It was a library that had been converted into a guest room. The walls were lined with towering bookshelves reaching to the ceiling. It smelled faintly of aged paper and dried lavender. She sank onto the soft leather sofa and covered herself with the blanket. Warmth slowly began to permeate her body, and with it, a crushing exhaustion began to set in. The surge of adrenaline was receding, leaving a profound emptiness in its wake. She was safe. Eleanor would contact the prosecutor. They would unequivocally prove that the transfer was nothing more than a malicious trap. She had the documents. The crucial file was in the hallway, tucked safely within the pocket of the oversized coat. No, she should have brought the file with her. Evelyn attempted to rise, but her strength utterly failed her. "I'll just rest for a minute," she thought. Just 1 minute. Her gaze wandered around the familiar room, catching on the worn spines of books, the heavy velvet drapes, the framed photographs arranged on the mantel. Piece. Here was Arthur at his graduation. Here was their wedding. Arthur was smiling, but he was looking directly at the camera, not at his bride. Here were the grandchildren, playing joyfully in the park. Evelyn's eyes suddenly fixated on a photograph in the far corner of the shelf. The picture was recent, a vibrant color print in an expensive silver frame, depicting some kind of elaborate banquet. Eleanor Sterling, resplendent in an evening gown, held a delicate champagne flute. She was smiling, a rare sight for her. Standing intimately next to her was a man, short, balding, with a cunning, almost rat-like face. He held her arm with the familiarity of an old confidant. Evelyn blinked. All traces of sleepiness vanished instantly. She had seen that face barely an hour ago in her husband's office. It was the legal consultant, Elias Stone, the very man who had meticulously forged the documents, the very man who had so cynically laughed about how cleverly they had framed the cleaner. But why was he in a photograph with Eleanor Sterling, and why did they appear so close, so intimately connected? Fragments of a conversation from 3 years ago flashed into her memory. Arthur had complained that he couldn't locate a sufficiently ruthless legal expert for his intricate schemes, and Eleanor had replied, I have someone thoroughly vetted. He assisted your father with similarly delicate matters as well. A cold far more terrifying than the freezing outdoor air gripped Evelyn's heart. Arthur hadn't found the legal consultant. Eleanor had brought him into the fold. She didn't just know, she was involved. 5 million, Evelyn whispered, the staggering amount echoing in her mind. Arthur could never have orchestrated this alone. He was undeniably greedy, but he lacked the intellect and the strategic foresight for such a complex, 3-year-long maneuver. He required an architect, someone who possessed the patience to wait and the cunning to plan. Evelyn slowly, carefully, trying not to make the sofa springs creak, got up. She had to flee immediately. The peppermint tea her mother-in-law was preparing might very well be the last thing she ever drank. She tiptoed to the door leading to the living room. The door was cracked open a few centimeters. Alina's voice drifted from the living room. She was speaking quietly, but in the apartment's silence, every word dropped like a stone. Yes, Elias, I know it's risky, but this is even better. Evelyn held her breath. No, I didn't call the lawyer. Why would I? Eleanor's voice became irritated. I'm calling Arthur, but his line is busy. Ah, here's the second line. Wait. A click. Switching calls. Arthur. Eleanor's voice changed, becoming authoritative and harsh. Stop being hysterical. Shut up and listen to me.